feel like that'll age really well or really terribly.
Yeah.
Welcome to Human in the Loop, a series where we discuss what it takes to build and deploy real-world systems for the enterprise.
I'm Felix Su.
I'm Sam Denton.
I'm Clemens Viernicke.
I'm Ben Sharfstein, and today we're reacting to AI hot takes.
Coding agents will replace all engineers.
The capabilities of the models are definitely going to increase. So I always find it difficult to say like the level of the quality of the model is like not good enough. I feel like it's probably going to get like maybe even better at you as an engineer like today, but like that doesn't mean like there will be no engineers at all. I feel like just the job of the engineer, like it is with most of the tech, like throughout all history, in a sense, like will just like change. So like the engineers will do a different job, or they will do different judgment calls. Like similarly how we coded in like I didn't, but like you had like kind of like punch cards at assembly and whatever, and like basically you added more and more abstractions. And this is like, to me, it more feels like there's going to be like a very massive increase of abstraction that we're adding. But like it doesn't mean like there's no engineer. Engineer just takes different decisions.
The hot take that maybe is, I would say yes, is maybe engineers won't write code. And we'll see. I mean, we'll see if that's the case. I would say, I probably would say that probably engineers in 10 years won't be writing code, in the same way that engineers like are not doing, long division by hand. It's not the job anymore. It's about designing the system in the same way that, a mechanical engineer is doing a very different thing than they did 50 years ago.
Yeah, I feel like it just comes down to the qualifications on the word all and when. Like, I mean, I think we're talking about like 5 years from now versus 300 years from now. I mean, it's not a very hot take anymore, but maybe it is,
But the thing is, like, there are certain times when it just has nothing to do. Like, if a model is literally just like probabilistically just trying to figure out like what's the next best thing to do, there are certain designs where like there's 10 options. There's 10 options. A model is not going to pick, even a human is not going to pick the best option all the time. It's like, based on what we need, I'll pick option 1 or option 3.
If you write good enough requirements and you just say, this is the acceptance criteria.
Yeah, but then we need engineers to do that. So now
I don't know. You just have PMs do it.
I'll give a hot take. Oh, so PMs, no engineers, just
PMs definitely not.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Fine-tuning is dead. Context windows killed it.
So I think my take on this in general is that as we start asking LLMs and agents to continue to do more and more complex things, the amount of information that you would have to put into the context window and that you have available to put into the context window to give it the information it needs to solve a long, complex, domain-specific problem is not as much bang for your buck as if you actually took the problem that you were trying to solve, figured out how do you frame this as a fine-tuning problem, and then tried to train an LLM to solve it.
I agree with you. I think maybe the framing that helped me kind of understand where fine-tuning versus putting in the context is helpful is that when you're trying to teach it very specific information or give it specific information, you need to put in the context window. And the value of fine-tuning is not trying to teach it information. The value is trying to help it learn how to make decisions.
Yeah.
And as we move towards agents, which are, for tool calling and need to understand how to solve a specific problem, that's where I think fine-tuning and using reinforcement learning and inside of environments is going to become really valuable again. Historically, fine-tuning was like, teach it how to speak in a certain style or like how to respond in a certain way. And what we've seen is just, it's really not good at teaching it information. And context, I mean, I think context is the product. Context is king on so many different things. Context is not going to help it necessarily do the right tool calling at scale and all that type of stuff. And that's where fine-tuning is going to, I think, kind of have a resurgence.
Yeah, I changed my mind actually.
So where were you before?
Okay, I was up. Now here, let me explain. So I totally agree with you guys. Like, especially you guys know I've been working on this long agents thing. 100%. Like long term, decision making definitely needs to be tuned. I think my first immediate thought was, what are the 99% of applications that are out there today? And so if you just think about it from that lens of like, all right, how many applications can I solve by throwing stuff into the context window that would make an impact today? It's probably a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were a lot of things that we did RAG before because we were trying to pull things and shorten, and then now it's just like, million tokens, context window. It's like, I just feel like there's so many problems that are just kind of like, the easy problems are just almost all solved in a lot of scenarios. But yes, 100% agree with you. I'm kind of like, kind of tilted this way now because the current stage of bringing data to the context window is going to go away at some point as a solved problem. And then there's going to be the unsolved problem, and not 100%.
I was kind of in between on this one. I think like I agree with kind of like the first part of this because I have like that fine tuning is dead in the sense that like maybe it's not like dead yet, but it's like more like a temporary thing. It seems like we've seen, maybe that's a reverse hot take, that like the effort of fine tuning in the majority of cases is like not worth the hustle. Because like we've seen time and time again, we've seen this all at scale, basically, that the progress of the models themselves and like the techniques to basically like improve the quality has outpaced kind of like the stuff that you can get out of the fine tuning. So like I do feel like fine tuning seems like a very, very temporary thing. So I would agree that it's dead. I would agree with you, Sam, what we mentioned, that also why I was in between, that the context window is not the reason. Also, like the context window, there's definitely still a difference between the capabilities of the model and the context that you're providing. But I do feel like we're not going to be talking about fine tuning like in a few years from now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also depends on like how do you define fine tuning, because like post training is a very big category too. So
Yeah.
The cost of underinvesting in AI right now is organizational extinction.
I mean, we gotta say yes. We're enterprise.
No, I was gonna say, I feel like
what are you
Joe,
doing?
what are you guys doing?
Oh my god!
What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Okay. I think for some companies,
Okay.
it doesn't matter. Yeah. You guys are like
Maybe I'm
thinking about the losers.
Maybe I'm being too technocratic about these hot takes.
You're being too technical here. Like, if you're
You're on the wrong
Meta
side
and you
of everyone.
underinvest, if you don't invest $14 billion,
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you're going extinct.
Yeah.
You should invest a lot more.
Yeah.
No, I think, but I actually do think that like for some companies, the like classic thing that people say is like, can startups innovate faster than the enterprise can wait, what's the order there? Can the incumbent adopt the tool faster than the startup can innovate or whatever? And I think for a lot of companies, they thought they had a really strong position. I mean, for example, Google, like they thought they had a really strong position in search. And if they don't adopt AI, like they're out of it. And I think that's probably true. Obviously Google is like on the cutting edge of a lot of different things, but even just your kind of non-tech company or non-software company, they're at a real risk for disruption. And they're going to be disrupted by people that are taking a counter position, that are taking AI and really adopting into their product. And we're seeing this, that enterprises are willing to buy software from companies the size that they would never have considered before. And that is very disruptive for these large enterprises. Now, obviously, like there's some industries where it doesn't matter, and they have such a strong network effect or foothold that they can actually wait and see. And I think in a lot of cases, it may be the right thing to wait and see, but everyone should buy enterprise.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I'm just way too practical about questions like that. But I think that there are a lot of companies where that is true. Maybe it's not every company, but I think it's a pretty reasonable hot take.
I mean, the thing is, like, even if you aren't talking about the companies that are competing in AI, you're just talking about your classic, big corporation, non-sexy, whatever. It's just about margins too, right? I mean, we have companies that come to us and they say like, look, we have we can't take on some of these accounts because our margins would be like razor thin in those accounts. And so, but then the expectation of our clients is getting different, right? They're like, well, you have a bunch of AI tools, like you should be able to do it for cheaper. And they're like, if they don't operationalize AI, they will lose those clients, right? And so it's like, even for those non-tech companies, I think at some point they will encounter a situation where some really, really important competitor is going to improve their margins and you're going to lose something, right? And that'll be bad.
I'm like, my no was again like probably more like it's definitely not true for every company, but like I mean, like we are all here because we strongly believe that this is like the case for many companies. But I think the interesting thing that we've been seeing throughout the past 2 years is that enterprises that we talk to, they definitely see it like that. Like it's really astonishing to see the level of urgency and speed that these enterprises like show with regards to investing in an AI. And like, it's not just like investing, it's not just believing that like they will maybe go extinct, but also like the way that they're kind of like buying software, the way that they're trying to roll it out, they're trying to increase their investments, like even on the slightest level of like success that has been shown with a pilot, they're kind of like want to double down, they want to 10x their investment, like because they definitely believe that.
Yeah, and I think the exciting thing is it's finally starting to pay off, and I think the people who haven't made that investment are going to be doubling down really quickly, really fast.
Yeah, I think the what we saw maybe 12 months ago was, let's invest in this, let's do a proof of concept, let's build an MVP, let's prove out that there's something here. And now people are coming to us and they know that they want to do it. They know that they need to do it.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to sell them to some, small little skunkworks project. We're like, this is a core initiative of the company. And that's what we want to focus on. That's what we focus on at Scale, is like, how do we focus on problems that get mentioned in earnings call, move the stock price, like the most important problems for your company. And there are these problems for every single company that we work with. I think for every single enterprise, there are things where they can fundamentally transform themselves with AI.
Yeah. And I just want to be careful about something. It's like, I want to encourage companies, like, these take many shots on goal sometimes. Like we're kind of expecting, like, just because you're a big company, you invest in AI, like bang, first try, you're gonna get something that's like high value.
If you work with us, you will.
Right. That's yeah. So we do encourage that. But it's like, if you come in and you take a shot and you're like, oh, it turns out like our users don't think this is transformational for their jobs, right? It doesn't mean AI is not transformational for your company. It just means that you might have chosen the wrong thing. I mean, like, this is what startups do, right? They, like, 1 out of every, whatever the number is, X startups is successful. It's like the same thing when you start something new with AI. It's like a lot of these companies don't have experience with that. And that fear of like, oh, I took a shot, didn't really work, let's just like take a pause on AI, is, I don't think, the right attitude. You will encounter a competitor that takes the right shot, and then you will be a little bit, right? So that's why it's important to work with vendors who kind of know the space and kind of know which shots to take.
And it's interesting to see that, like, I mean, like, talking to 2 life science companies, both of which are like super big companies, and both believe that AI is an extinction level event for them, but still looking at their priorities where they want to apply AI, they're like orthogonally different. Like, which is also like surprising to see, like, or like interesting to see how what are the biggest problems in your business that you want to solve with AI can be very different even for the same type company.
Single agent systems are more reliable in the real world than multi-agent systems.
Felix, you gotta start with the disagreement.
I guess I'll start. Okay, so let me frame this a little bit, because I feel like it's a little bit.
Were you agree or disagree?
I was disagree.
Hot take.
So the reason is because I think if you share the full state and the context across your system, I do think that is more reliable for sure. Because if you have all the information, you can make better decisions, and there's always going to be like a loss when you do handoffs and things like that. So it just really depends on how you define multi-agent or single agent. Like if I can, I do think that multi-agent systems are better in the sense that if I can have specializations in the state machine of what I'm designing, that 100% makes sense, right? Like an actor-critic model, you do want to separate the state between the two of them, because you don't want the critic model to get polluted by what the actor is doing, right? And so to me, if you define it as separation of responsibility, I think that is, like, in fact, probably like required in a lot of scenarios. But if you're talking about like, hey, then just hand off a sentence to the other person, I think that's disastrous too. So I do think that you need to separate, but if they're contained and they share the same state, I think that is more reliable.
I'll transition to positive. I was right in the middle, because I feel like it's directly proportional to the complexity of the problem. So the more complex the problem is, the more reliable multi-agent is. The least complex the problem is, the more reliable single agent is. So that's my take, but I'll transition to positive now.
No, I think just we're at a phase where we haven't built out robustness in multi-agent systems necessarily. And I don't think in the long term necessarily single agent systems are going to be more reliable. But today, as most people are building single agent systems that are not yet doing this kind of complex passing where you have to manage message state, they are more reliable now. And obviously we're seeing from the labs, from Anthropic, from different people, that they're building these multi-agent systems that are more reliable, that are, equivalent reliability or can be better. But it's just like today, the vast majority of people are building simpler single agent systems.
Right. To me, this is like, from the phrasing is more like about the reliable part. You mentioned like already like better in terms of like, I feel like it's very hard to say whether single agent systems are better than multi-agent systems. That I would not agree. For the reliability, it seems more like a first principles thing in terms of like given the agents are not that reliable in general just yet. If we're adding multiple things together, there's just like statistics that like they're probably going to be less reliable. But like of course, like depending on your use case, it might be more adequate still to use a multi-agent system, even if it's less reliable.
Yeah, I think it was like just like adding dimensionality to a system. Because you added dimensionality to a system, you can probably solve a problem in a more specific way.
Yeah.
But because you added that dimensionality, you have potential error modes that you might not see, and that might cause some problems. So
You don't like one file, 10K line PRs.
I've contributed some of those. Yeah.
The tooling around agents is much more nascent than anyone is willing to accept.
I mean,
Do
maybe
we
we're
need
all
to
willing to
discuss?
accept it, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe everyone knows that the
We're
tooling
good.
is very early,
Yeah.
but I think it's, I mean,
Oh.
yeah, it's
I mean, it's
very, very early days.
yeah. I don't know. It's like mostly like it's like SDKs, like wrapping and stuff. You know, like realistically, I don't know. I feel like, you know, we had functions in models for a while, like maybe over 2 years, maybe even. So, yeah, it's easier, you know, for sure. MCP, that's like a easier way to bring it, so you don't have to do all this like post processing, and like OpenAI agents like allows you to loop a little bit better. But to me, it's a lot of. That's why UX is important and better than, you know, because just use that. The UX is better and people like it more and use it more and they feel more powerful because they can do more things without thinking about it, right? And so it's just accessibility and distribution is better. But realistically, have we done massive advancements that make, you know, like, can we do like more things now? Can we do like rollouts of like 10 tools and 100 tools or 200 tools, perfect accuracy now? Like, I think a lot of this comes down to the business logic of the problem. We talked about the fine tuning and reinforcement learning. Like there's so much stuff to do that makes it good in a enterprise setting, like as most of us are working in. So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like not much has really been done yet.
Yeah. I think I submitted this and I really meant like all these like nitty gritty little details that are so frustrating when someone like sees a Twitter demo and you're like, but OpenAI messages don't have IDs on them. And it's just like all these like little annoying things that you're like trying to work through, right? Like when you tokenize, it removes white space. When you detokenize, it doesn't add it back, right? Like all these little things around like the nitty gritty details. I think when I think about what software engineering tools that have been around for 20 years look like, I think people forget that these tools have been around for like 12 months.
What you said, like I was walking over to your team and then they said like the RLVR, I was asking them, how did you guys do on RLVR? And they're like, there's so much. Like
Yeah.
we're convinced, but we have to do all this stuff. Like,
Yeah,
what is that stuff? Like,
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I was actually asking, like, what are some examples?
Well, I think those are the things I was saying, right? Like, for example, when you
Exactly. I was
when you, yeah. That's what I meant. Like when you call a tool,
yeah.
you have these chat templates that get rid of white space for you in your tool call. But then when you want to put the tool call back into the rollout, the white space is no longer there. And so now all of a sudden all your token IDs are offset. So these like tiny little things that are just so frustrating when you're trying to build complex things on this level.
Yeah. I think the tooling around Twitter agents is like pretty good.
Yeah,
That's true. You know,
Replit is killing it.
Yeah, exactly. They just crossed 100 million.
There you go.
But like when you actually want to use these things, I mean, it's like, you know, you can put something on localhost, but it's very different than putting it, you know, on the cloud in Kubernetes, scalable, fault tolerant, all of those types of things. And I think that we're still in early days. I mean, I think probably people understand this and accept it, but we're still very, very early. And then I think the real thing that like people aren't really talking about is that there's a lot of tooling that I think we're going to develop around continuous learning about these agents that get better the more you use them. And that we're still in like -1 innings. I mean, it's, you know, you talk to people that are researchers and they talk about continuous learning, but it's like not even talked about in the kind of mainstream Twitter sphere, let alone people really building.
I feel like to make this, like, it seems like we're all agreeing, like to make this an actual hot take in a sense that I do feel that you just mentioned like, oh, a lot of things have been around like 20 years and they're getting really good. We actually probably at a time looking at the pace at which like new stuff comes out, where we're gonna have like early stage tooling like for, I don't know, like maybe not forever, but basically like I think we're just like in a new world where like just the velocity of software that is coming out is like so high now across the board that we're gonna have like early stage tooling like for the foreseeable future in like all respects. Not to say like things don't get better, but like I feel like at the time when kind of like OpenAI fixes these things in their SDK, they already come up with the next 3 SDKs, and we have like a new protocol coming out, and these are again now cutting edge. They're maybe like the best, but they're still early stage again. So I feel like we're in it for unstable tooling for a long time.
I mean, that said, the cost of writing code is going to zero, and like we're speed running all of these things. I mean, 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 3 years ago, it would take us a lot longer to get to the tooling to be robust. And now with coding agents, with Claude Code, writing 70% of the code, like we're going to actually get to robustness a lot quicker.
Well, maybe that's why nothing is robust.
Maybe. Yeah.
Written by AI.
The primary barrier to enterprise AI adoption is not technical, it's human.
I feel like you didn't give us enough time on that.
Yeah, I don't really know how to interpret that.
It's a hot take. You got to respond quick.
I did the right hand again.
Yeah.
I think probably the best way to adopt AI in the enterprise setting is finding the right natural place for human and AI to work together. And I think if that's your belief, then I think like by definition, being with humans and being adopted by humans and being aligned with humans is going to be your biggest barrier. But there are a lot of things in enterprise technology that present barriers to AI. So I think that's why they both feel like barriers to me. But yeah,
I think the way I'm interpreting this is I don't think we need to invent new technology in order to adopt AI in enterprises.
Oh, I was just thinking about like data ponds and lakes all over the place.
I agree with that. I think there is technology that needs to get built but not invented, implemented but not invented. So if you think about like if the models got no better today, we would still have a 10-year transformation in front of us.
For sure.
And actually, Sam Altman was talking to Gary Tan the other day, YC, and was talking about like if we never improved O3, there's still every single startup in this room could still exist and continue to exist and really do big transformations. I think that's true. And it's human in the sense of like, you need to implement it and you need to do the change management and you need to write the basic software that does, the data pipelines and the security and all of that type of stuff and iterates on the UX. Those are the human things that they need to write. They need to build the technology, but it's not the reason that, enterprises haven't adopted AI is not because, the model's not good enough.
Yeah.
That's,
going back
maybe
to the UX.
GPT-3 wasn't good enough, but like, I think since GPT-4, it's been pretty much like the model is good enough to do a lot of things. And obviously it's getting better and reasoning models have like really pushed that boundary out. But it's at this point, it's a time problem. Maybe it's not a human problem. It's a time problem. Like it just needs to get implemented.
Going back to the UX piece.
Yeah. Going back to UX.
I mean, it's like, this actually kind of goes back to why I think like coding is not going to get replaced by AI. Because like, if you think about these systems, like one of the reasons why we aren't seeing like super, like very successful products today is because it takes a lot of people to design every step of the way. How are these data pieces going to come together? What is the product part of this? Like what's impact going to have? Like you can think about some of the accounts that we have, like the massive ones. There's so many moving pieces. There's so many different things that you have to connect and you have to connect it the right way. And then you have to put it into a product that presents a solution. It's like 40 different things could go wrong if you made the wrong decision, right? It's like, this is why I think it's like fundamentally like a human barrier, because it's like humans have to all get together and you have to navigate away from the bad things and towards the good things. And maybe only 1 out of 50 streams is viable and going to make a difference. And to get a whole village to believe in you and massage it that way without deviating off the path, I think is a fundamentally human problem. It's like a political problem. It's like a way of thinking problem. It's like personality problem, and it's not about tech.
The majority of humans just don't like change. So like,
yeah.
There's so many barriers with kind of like doing all of this, but I would definitely agree with this take that like the primary barrier for many, many things is going to be human, because like it's just going to be rapid change, and like change is not something people
So
like.
what I'm hearing is management consulting's not going away.
Congratulations, management consultants.
All right, finishing off the episode, give us your biggest hot take.
All right, my hot take is that almost all entry-level jobs have like negative expected value right now. Let me add something to it. I think the only reason to have an entry-level person is to train them to become a senior-level person.
All right, I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but I live in New York. New York's great, but San Francisco is definitely the best city in the US. And if you disagree, then you don't know what you're doing.
Wow.
So my hot take is like this NBA season was like not that great.
And my hot take, which I don't think is really a hot take, watermelon is vastly overrated.
Stop.
Can I leave the show? I'm gonna leave.
It's just- it's just
Everyone leaves.
Not close to a top tier fruit. It's just
That is
terrible.
literally
Watermelon's
insanity.
terrible.
I'll
I'm not even
invalidate
sure- I'm not
everything
even
that he
sure what
said.
we're doing.
Thanks for listening to Human in the Loop. To stay in the loop for more AI related content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.